All right, I just want to do a quick review of Mr. Hoover this week and the Great Depression, and then start into the New Deal, this complete change. It'll go from the private sector being the important dynamic in the country. It'll be more the government has a very dynamic role to play in the New Deal, of course. But again, one quick review about the Great Depression, right? Basically, it's a deflationary time. This is a multiple choice question on the midterm, right? It's not inflation. Prices aren't going up. Prices are basically going down because no one's buying anything. No one has money. Um, Banks collapse, so it's again people lost a lot of their savings when they could not get money out of the banks. They were not insured, so it's a deflation every time. Um, Supply and demand, yeah, don't worry about that too much. Remember Mr. Hoover, of course, but again, everyone's essays this week were very good generally about Mr. Hoover. And again, these volunteer measures, again, he's a free market guy, so he's not going to change overnight. Um, so, again, one of the things that Mr. Hoover did, and again, this is a multiple choice question in the test because it's come up today, right? Because Mr. Trump is seen as protectionist, America first, um, make America great again, buy American. So this Smoot-Hawley or Hawley-Smoot tariff of 1930, this was Mr. Hoover's response to helping American businesses by putting high taxes on imported goods. Of course, it makes things worse because other countries, of course, retaliate and they raise their tariffs on American goods. So, of course, it decreases world trade. So, will the same thing happen today with Mr. Trump with all his rhetoric about trade wars? Not trade wars, but basically putting tariffs on imported goods, like he did last week with bombardier jets in Canada. All right, so I'm moving on to the New Deal. Of course, we have a new president in 1933, the elections in 1932, and of course, the Great Depression has been going on for 3 years, over 3 years. So Mr. Franklin Delano Roosevelt is elected in office. He's a Democrat. He believes that the government has solutions for these problems. So, as some people point out in their essay, Mr. Hoover was afraid of socialism if the government got too much involved in the economy. FDR, not in a sense a socialist, but has a lot of government programs that we will see. Of course, he has his wife Eleanor, who is a very intellectual person and pushes him more to the left. Um, she's a fascinating woman of the 20th century. We'll talk more about her in class. Of course, we get the Dust Bowl during the Great Depression, just makes things worse. And this the essay question on the midterm about the New Deal is going to be about the rise of the public sector, because the problem in the free markets, basically, this Great Depression is too big for private enterprise to fix itself. It's going on too long. Again, most Republicans believe that the economy would self-correct and eventually fix itself. And again, it's kind of simple to understand. It will self-correct because the economy is not doing well. No one has money, so people, basically sellers will lower their prices. Again, lower prices, eventually people will start buying. And then when people start buying more at these lower prices, again, producers will have to hire more people to basically meet demand. And that will eventually, hiring more workers, they'll get paid more wages. And again, this will get us out of the depression. But again, prices have to drop first for this to happen. But it's going on so long. Again, basically, the society, the people at the time wanted, a government intervention into the problem, and this is there we get the New Deal. And again, the New Deal. There's on the essay question of the New Deal, this rise of the government sector. Again, one of the first things he does, and again, it should be in the essay, is dealing with the banks, because the Great Depression is is mostly a financial collapse. The banks basically dissolved in this country. A large percentage of banks had to shut down. So you have to have banks running an economy, or businesses can't grow, because businesses have to borrow money to grow. Generally, they always do, and they borrow money from banks or through banks. So we have to have a sound banking system to have a sound economy. So FDR comes in. The first thing he does is this Emergency Banking Act of 1933, where he closes down all the banks for a short bank holiday to make sure they're all functioning correctly, that they all have enough, in a sense, good assets to be able to pay off their depositors if the depositors want their cash. So it's very important to, again, make people feel good about the banks. And again, if I'm going to talk about this, if you do the New Deal essay, you really should mention the FDIC and the SEC, right? These are two organizations that are around to this day: the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation and the Securities and Exchange Commission. The Securities and Exchange Commission is basically the policeman for the stock market and the securities industry. So the FDIC, of course, is the insurer for banks. So every bank has to buy this insurance from the Federal Reserve, from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, excuse me. So if the banks fail, the FDIC will pay off $250,000, up to $250,000 of depositors' money. There's also the Glass-Steagall Act. This will be a multiple choice question on the midterm, right? So the Glass-Steagall Act, we didn't want to have this problem where banks basically had bad assets, and they couldn't pay off their depositors. So Glass-Steagall, actually, the federal government goes in and breaks banks in two. So banks become, like Morgan Bank at the time is split up into Morgan Guaranteed Bank and then Morgan Stanley. And Morgan Guaranteed is a commercial bank. And again, it's basically non-risky loans and deposits where you loan money out to businesses and people to buy houses, buy cars. It's a commercial bank. The other part of Morgan Stanley, is a risky investment bank where they will help companies go public. They will loan money out to new companies. It's investment banking. It's riskier, but you need that in society too. But we don't want to have the safe and secure commercial banks, right, be undermined by some risky investment bank lending practices. So this is where the government goes in and splits the banking system in half. It's important because Glass-Steagall is repealed under Bill Clinton, and some people will point that's one of the problems of the recession of 2007, 2008. Because banks again got into risky investments, and it causes another financial crisis. So for the New Deal question, there's also these new jobs. They're basically the federal government creating jobs to put people to work. Again, the CCC is a classic one, the Civilian Conservation Corps. These are temporary things just to put people to work, to give them money, to stimulate the economy. It's a federal program to stimulate the economy, just like Obama did when he comes into office in 2008, at the start of the Great Recession. He had a $700 billion stimulus package to put people to work, hire teachers, build roads. So that's what the Civilian Conservation Corps and a bunch of these other programs. The Public Works Administration too, same sort of thing. The PWA creates these larger programs. The TVA, the Tennessee Valley Authority, this is a multiple choice question because it's still around to this day. And if you do a quick Google search for TVA, they have a website and they'll talk about themselves. This is the Tennessee Valley Authority. It's a section of rural, Tennessee, Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Kentucky, where the federal government has a lot of dams, nuclear power plants, coal-burning electric plants, where they want to electrify this, the Tennessee Valley, because it's Appalachia here, where it's economically it's really hard to string electric lines through these up and downs of the Tennessee Valley if you've ever been. But the TVA, this federal program, basically will bring electricity to this part of the country and really helps them economically. So they're still around to this day. If you live in Tennessee, a lot of people have jobs, federal jobs with the TVA. It's an interesting place. Right? So again, there's a whole bunch of programs to help farmers. Again, the farmers suffered in the 1920s. They will suffer into the 1930s. Again, The Grapes of Wrath, if you've read it, is about these poor farmers from Oklahoma moving out to California and basically getting discriminated on in California. It's a terrible time for these uprooted farmers until, again, the beginning of World War II, when there is such an increase in defense spending, and there's a lot of defense industries in California. So a lot of these people finally have a more secure life, unfortunately, with the start of World War II. So there is this National Recovery Act that he puts in place, and what they try to do, the federal governments will try to set pricing and wages. So the federal government tells businesses what they can charge and how they should pay their workers. This will get overturned by the Supreme Court, and it doesn't really last that long, but it's a really fascinating look in the federal government trying to impose itself on the private market, the free markets. Yeah, you can see some pictures here of the Great Depression, and we're going to get in the second New Deal. I'll probably talk about this more on Monday. I'll do another lecture on Monday. But here we get some programs. Again, they're always lasting up to this day. And again, do not do the essay question on the New Deal if you can't talk about the Social Security Act and what Social Security does. It's basically a payroll tax that forces you as a worker to buy life insurance. But it has a big effect on the economy. And I'll talk about this more on Monday. I'll do a quick lecture. So email me if you have any questions, but I will talk about more of what goes on in the second New Deal. Fine. Have a nice weekend. Have a nice Monday off. Let me see if I can turn this thing off. Where is my program? There it is.